Welcome to Monday through Friday, Cellular Agriculture for a Pandemic-Free Future. My name is George Ortega, and this is episode number 14. It is Sunday, July 26th at 3:40 p.m. And all right, I'm going to go back to the beginning. As I said when 14 episodes back, I'm going to keep doing episodes 5 a week until you get this, because it's so important. It really is. One, the only reasonable way we have of avoiding future pandemics is to stop farming and eating and abusing animals at a rate of over 70 billion a year, and either go vegan, which would be the best option. That's the best way we have to prevent pandemics and to be as healthy as possible. But if we don't have the moral fiber to do that, wisdom, and the second best thing is it's a godsend. We have to transition from farming and eating animals to this brand new technology called cellular agriculture that produces products that are known as clean meat, cell-cultured meat, lab-grown meat, in vitro meat, and it's basically essentially growing our beef and pork and chicken and dairy and eggs in sterilized environments outside of animals, so that we thereby eliminate virtually all threat of viral and bacterial infections, outbreaks, epidemics, pandemics. So that's the basic message. Now, our problem is that it's a brand new industry. It was created in 2013. There's about $1 billion invested in it now, but at the rate of research and development, they have to basically scale it up from growing these products in labs, because they've already grown foie gras, chicken, seafood. They've grown a lot of products. Well, I'm not sure about a lot, but a good number in labs. But there's some challenges that they have to meet to be able to scale it up to mass produce these products at competitive prices. So you can go into a supermarket and buy this cultured beef, like a hot dog, chicken nuggets, whatever you want, again, in a way that that doesn't pose a risk of future pandemics. So yeah, at the rate of research, these products will probably not be in supermarkets to a major degree for about a decade. There may be a few, maybe, that will come out in the next year or two, but they may be limited to just high-scale, upper-end restaurants. They may not actually make it to supermarkets. So, all right, so we have the problem, and part of the solution is, right now, we're just spending $1 billion. Now, I've mentioned this Congressional Budget Office report estimate that Forbes reported on June 2nd. Apparently the report was conducted in May, that predicted that we here in the United States can expect to spend about $8 trillion on this COVID-19. Business shutdown, lockdown, distancing, deaths, so much carnage. It's not just the money, it's the suffering, So, but you know, just focusing on the money, ask yourself, what do you believe it would be reasonable, prudent, wise, as a percentage of how much we'll be spending on this pandemic to give us our best chance of avoiding future pandemics? How much would that be worth? I asked a friend of mine recently. He said, I don't know, 5, 10%. And yeah, that seems reasonable. But we're fortunate though, because to be really, really safe, and I'm, you know, probably at least 95% safe from where we were, where we are now, maybe even higher than 99%. We don't have to spend 5% of what we'll be losing on this pandemic. All we have to spend is 1/2 of 1%, which amounts to about $50 billion, which seems like a lot, but again, relative to this 8 trillion we'll be spending is 1/2 of 1%. We spend this not in a year or two. We start spending this in a month or 2 or 3, or, you know, once Trump's out, I suppose. And we will have solved a major problem going forward into the world. It's not just, you know, I've mentioned this before, it's not just viral pandemics like this coronavirus. It's also that our factory farming system is so unsanitary that we actually use 80% of our antibiotics, not on humans, but on animals, you know, to keep them healthy, because otherwise, in the conditions they're generally kept in, there would be outbreaks every day, bacterial infections and all. So, so the other part of this is, as we transition to this cellular agriculture, we mitigate a threat that's known as antibacterial resistance. You know, these bacteria, and many people know about this, they develop resistances to the vaccines, to the antiviral, you know, antibiotics that we develop to counteract them. And some experts, like the health minister, I believe, of the UK, predicted that antibacterial resistance may pose a greater threat to humanity than climate change. That's how serious that is. So again, 1/2 of 1% of what we'll be spending on this one to create a world for our children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren going forward. That is whereby they're protected from what we're going through, will be going through. You know, we owe it to these generations. I mean, we've been handed a world that's so amazing in so many ways by our ancestors, who often had to fight wars, you know, to create this kind of world, and suffer a lot of deprivation. So in terms of our moral responsibility toward future generations, we really owe them, especially considering how egregiously we've been avoiding fighting climate change. We've been ignoring it, essentially. So, all right, well, that's the message. More recently, I've become a bit more ambitious on this. Let me present this, because it's part of the message. I mean, like, that we pay people, you know, this COVID-19, if you're religious, if you believe in God or a higher power, and that's about 90% of you here in the United States, then you probably understand that this COVID-19 is punishment from God for our, among other things, abusing these 70 billion animals each year, paying people to do this, paying people to abuse and torture these animals in many cases, so that we can have clean, so we can have cheap meat and dairy and eggs, so it doesn't cost us that much. That's evil. That is like, that's beyond evil. So, so we've got an opportunity. You know, God sometimes brings the best out of us through punishment. And so this is an opportunity for us to finally face, you know, how horrible we've been. Just like 150 years ago, the country faced the horror of slavery, you know, how profoundly immoral an institution that was. And they faced it, and they overcame it, and we became a better country. You know, we still have segregationist policies. You know, Black people are still discriminated against in various ways, and we're working on that. But you know, they faced that evil in us, and they overcame it. Now we have to face the evil in us that causes us to consume so much meat and dairy and eggs, knowing, you know, very few of us are not aware of the damage of how these animals are treated. It's not like we don't know, it's just we don't care. We put it out of your minds. I mean, I'm not going to include myself on this. I've been a vegan for over 15 years. I've been a vegetarian for almost 30, about 30. And so, yeah, that's what you do. You basically, you pay people to torture animals, and that's like really, really, and you know this. And, you know, so again, once we do this, I mean, and you know, I'm going to keep pushing this $50 billion for cellular agriculture to fast track this research, so that we can get these products to market, not in 10, 15 years, but in 2 or 3 years, maybe even sooner. But you know, that's a good backup plan, you know, but the ideal thing to do is for us to all go vegan, to challenge ourselves, to face that these animals don't deserve that kind of treatment. These products are killing us anyhow. I mean, the number one cause of death in the United States is heart disease. The number one cause of heart disease is meat consumption. Number two cause of death is cancer. And, you know, we know that processed meats and a lot of processed dairy, eggs are implicated in various cancers. So, so that's but you know, this plan B, I mean, like, it's good to have a backup. We should do both. We should invest this $50 billion as an insurance policy, you know, as we're transitioning from eating meat to all going vegan, and hope that that we're successful. Think of the alternative. We still don't know how long it's going to take us to reopen society. Maybe reopen, you know, in 6 months. I mean, there was a New York Times podcast called titled "The Daily," and a health and science reporter for the New York Times, Donald McNeil Jr., was a guest, and he had interviewed many epidemiologists, infectious disease experts, and he advised us through that podcast that we shouldn't be surprised if we're going through this second, third wave of this distancing for a year or two or three. And he also advised us during that episode that the fastest a vaccine has ever been developed was in response to the 1957 pandemic, influenza pandemic here in the United States. Or it might have been just a viral infection, I'm not sure. But, and generally it takes about 10 years or longer to develop these vaccines. We still don't have a vaccine for HIV. And so the point here is that, we're fast tracking the development of this vaccine. We may have a vaccine that will have taken them a year and a half to create, because we've pumped resources into this. People from all over the world are working on it. They have the resources, they have the funding, they have the personnel. So imagine that same kind of commitment to preventing future pandemics as we're taking to create a vaccine to save us from this one. $50 billion, and again, we might have these cultured cell products in supermarkets, this clean meat available to us at prices no different from what we're paying now. In perhaps a year, 2 years, if we really, if in several months we start to release this $50 billion to bring in much more qualified, much more expert researchers. I mean, the researchers in the field now, they know their stuff, but you bring more money into it, you get, more researchers, better researchers, more resources. So that's what we need to do. Okay. So your job is to talk about this, to do the research, if you don't believe me about, well, this is the really only reasonable way we have to be safe from future pandemics. Not just that. Some reporters, some politicians say, well, this COVID-19 is a 1 in 100 year event. That is extremely dangerously misleading because, well, again, the reason they say that is because of the 1918 pandemic, Spanish flu. They're comparing it to that. And that pandemic killed perhaps 50 million people, perhaps more. Killed far more people than World War I did. And so, but after that, you had the 57 pandemic, the 68 pandemic, you had AIDS in the 80s, and in the 2000s, you had Ebola, Zika, swine flu, avian flu, SARS, MERS. It's not only that this isn't a 1 in 100 year event, but the frequency of these outbreaks that lead to pandemics is increasing. We dodged several bullets with MARS and SARS. These viruses didn't have the DNA to attack as effectively like the Spanish flu did and coronavirus is doing. But we were lucky, so again, this isn't a 1 in 100 year event, and these outbreaks are increasing in frequency. So because, the other, I should mention this show is about cellular agriculture, but this is so important, I should mention this often too. In addition to this $50 billion on cellular agriculture, we should definitely be spending at least $50 billion to ramp up fast-track research on universal vaccines. You know, vaccines that would be protective against any and all strains of viral infection, and the same for antibiotics that the bacteria cannot, in theory, develop a resistance to. We should be spending $50 billion on that at least. So $100 billion, 1% of what we'll be spending to contain, to pay for, you know, the effects of this COVID-19 in order to prevent, you know, this from ever happening again. I think it's a bargain. I was doing some research. I wanted a good comparison, so that I researched homeowners insurance. Let's say average price of a home, median price, is about $220. I mean, there are different sources. I saw one that said $250, another that said $300. But I went with $220. And the average cost of homeowners insurance to protect against fire and theft and all that is about $1,000 a month. So I calculated it over a period of 10 years. $1,000 for 10 years, $10,000 comes to be about 4.5% of the value of that house, $220,000 house. Now, if we were spending that rate, and the thing about these, homeowners insurance is basically people are paying for peace of mind, because it's very, very rare that a house is lost to fire or theft. You know, people are just paying this because, you know, the house it would be something great to lose. And so we protect against this. So now to compare this to the COVID-19, to these pandemics, if a homeowner is wise to spend 4.5% of the value of his house to protect against losing it, how much more sense, and again, the chance of losing it is very slight. So how much wiser and more prudent is it for us as a country to spend 1/2 of 1%, not even 4.5%, which would amount to about $350 billion. 1/2 of 1%. That's all we need. I mean, if we needed to spend 1% or 2%, 100 billion, 200 billion, that would also be a bargain. But that's what's being asked of you. That's what's being called upon you to do. It's not going to happen unless you talk about it, unless you learn about it. Understand, do enough research to trust that McNeil on the New York Times podcast, when he said that vaccines, are just not the answer, and do research that'll explain to you that that these universal vaccines are 10, 15 years out, if that. We'd have to wait. So do the research and understand that that as we eventually move out of this distancing, unless we want to live in dread, and imagine the investment environment for that, not knowing when something like this is going to happen again. We can live in dread of this, and if we're and be deserving of a next one if we continue to abuse those animals, or we can stop the abuse, go vegan ideally, or if we can't do that, or as we're doing that, as we're transitioning to doing that, we should just fast track this cellular agriculture research and development. That's what you need to do. Right? Most politicians are vaguely aware of this new industry. The FDA and the USDA are just now coming together to explore how to regulate it. You know, you have to regulate industries like this. It's a food industry. So, but the politicians are just like not aware. So write them a letter, call them, you know, tell them about this. Present the arguments I've been presenting. You know, I mean, like, it's just like, it's a bargain to invest now as soon as possible 0.5% of what we will be losing on this COVID-19 to prevent future ones. That's the message. Yeah, well, you know, I think it's something that people may have to demand. All right, well, we're running out of time. We've got about 2 more minutes. So again, I do this I tape this, I record this every Sunday through Thursday for cable casting on White Plains Community Media, every Monday through Friday at 5 p.m. And if you get Optimum or Altice, it's on channel 76. If you get Verizon, it's on channel 45. And I also upload all the episodes to YouTube. I actually upload them usually the evening before the cable cast, so you can get a preview of them if you'd like. So, all right, well, again, this is episode number 14, and you know, my guess is that as I do more and more of these shows, and I'll be presenting more and more evidence, you know, I've been reading a couple of books on pandemics. I'm learning a lot that I kind of wish I didn't know, but it's important, and I'll be presenting this information. And the hope, the expectation is that as you hear this over and over, and as I present it over and over, you know, you will be better understanding it, perhaps partly because I'll be better explaining, you know, better presenting this message. And, you know, we'll do this until it works, because, you know, climate change is a major threat, but, you know, that's like, in a lot of ways, decades into the future. This next pandemic could come, you know, a year or 2 after we're open. I mean, that's theoretically, it's possible. And from a religious, spiritual standpoint, if we don't do what we need to do for this, God might say, well, you don't deserve to be pandemic free, to have that blessing. So, all right, well, anyway, I hope you're having a good Monday, and I will see you tomorrow. Okay, thanks.